So, living anywhere, whether it be in Philippines or United States, you're going to get bad neighbors sometimes. And it's very hard to deal with bad neighbors. In some places, it seems like they have more protection than good people. For instance, here I had, how can I explain? We had a group of kids move in, and the mother was always working, and the kids were very delinquent. I don't know, trying to put that nicely. So one night, they decided to rob the place. And they robbed my neighbors upstairs. They took their cell phones. They reached in the windows. Philippines ain't built like America. So this was a close apartment complex and it was hot. So it's not uncommon for Filipinos to leave the door open at night, especially when you know your neighbors. But for whatever reason, the kids stole everything. So my wife decided to buy a outside camera. And we didn't get stolen that night because my door was shut. I have an aircon and it was locked. And long story short, the kids were laughing at the neighbors. They thought it was okay to steal. So when they were confronted, they were just basically F you have no proof kind of thing. Even though that, they were carrying the cell phones, they're bragging about it to everybody. Whatever, right? So we had one other neighbor in front of us. He was throwing furniture at his wife all the time. I don't tolerate spouse abuse. I don't tolerate violence of that kind. I'm one of those people that run towards danger. And the reason is because, I'm ex-Army for one. Not everybody's going to turn a blind eye to violence. Unfortunately, a lot of Filipinos do. And it's very sad. Because Filipinos who claim to be Catholic and love Jesus don't read what Jesus did. Jesus stopped the girl from being stoned to death. If we're supposed to be more like Jesus, how come Filipinos are being more like the devil? And that's what's going on. So, they moved out, then that neighbor out. And my first neighbor, when I was here, I had a video. I had to put a phone in because he was always beating his wife, and I got tired of it. But I could never catch him, and she would always lie for him. So one day he left his door open, and I see him throwing fist at her arms. He beat her so bad that she had to wear a towel around her. She couldn't walk outside without a towel. For whatever reason, even though I confronted him about it, he was trying to get violent with me, which I think is freaking hilarious because, I'm 260, maybe 8% body fat. I could beat the hell out of most WWE wrestlers. I'm ex-Army. I kick butt for a living. I'm sorry. That's just what I did. I didn't join the Army to be a cook. I joined the Army to be, trained to kill. And so after laughing at him in his poor attempt, his wife, for whatever reason, was more afraid of me. So we moved because of them. Now we have this new neighbor. And I was on the phone with my wife, Facebook, just sitting in front of my door. And I hear all kinds of screaming. I hear kids screaming. So when I looked, the way the apartment's set up, you can see through your neighbor's door. This girl was beating this 6-year-old so bad that her head bounced off the wall. And I was so infuriated, I had to run in there and I had to put a stop to it. I'm not going to let a kid get beat to death. I've seen enough YouTube videos where people are like, why didn't anybody do it? I know better. I've seen enough videos what happens if you don't do that, so I put a stop to it. Well, there is the mother, or I should say the grandmother, the mother, and the mother of the kids still there. And the girl that got hurt was a friend of the kids, and it was the friend doing the beating, okay? It wasn't them per se. But for whatever reason, yesterday, once again on my Facebook, I was sitting down there, I was talking to my girl. And I do have my camera outside. Every neighbor knows I put it there and I put it down on the entrance to help stop crime. So I hear all kinds of hell breaking loose with my neighbor next door, and it wakes up the little girl that's living with us here. And it was so bad that when the mom came out, the grandmother, she was beating her older daughter. Her older daughter's in her mid-20s. I'm not sure exact age, maybe 24. And she was beating her, just bludgeoningly, just beating her. She's trying to get her shoes on and leave. The husband, who's only like 80 pounds soaking wet, trying to leave to not much of a man at all, right? Like I told him, I got after him because he saw the little girl getting beaten last time, was just on his phone doing nothing. And that's shameful man behavior. And that's part of the problem in the Philippines. There's a serious lack of men. And I don't care if you get angry with me or that, because it's true. Because a real man's not going to let a kid get beat and have the head bounce off the wall. And that's shameful behavior. I'm all for punishing kids. Oh, you best believe it. Now, if you want to just paddle the butt a little bit, you want to put a belt, that's different. But I'm talking about this is a pure punching the kid in the face, bouncing the head off the cement. That's not okay. So yesterday, for whatever reason, Neighbor gets mad at me because my outside security cam catches her beating her daughter. And she says, I owe her an apology. And I said, for what? And she goes, you know, none of your neighbors here like you. They always talk bad about you. And you know what's really funny? While she's bad-mouthing me after beating her because I caught her on video, I could have just turned the video in and just had her arrested, which I think is like 5 years imprisonment or 10 years imprisonment for that, because it's a woman, for one thing. You know, depends if you have a good judge or not. Even in the Philippines, you have good judges, bad judges, just like America. But I didn't turn it in. I could. But I was trying to tell her, look, you're talking out of anger. But she didn't go in her apartment. She was trying to take her anger out on somebody, and I just wouldn't let her. Not me, anyway. So this 60-year-old woman kept blabbing her mouth, and she was talking bad about me to every neighbor here. I didn't do a damn thing. I had nothing to do with what was going on with her over there. What she didn't tell all the neighbors was that her 3 kids that live in her place, I was feeding. I was giving them chicken. I was giving them milk. I was giving them money, which they haven't paid me back. And I think maybe that's the problem. They don't want to pay me back. It is a problem for foreigners in the Philippines sometimes that you're going to be taken advantage of. You know, even by people that say they're your friend, or, you know, just never give to anybody. Don't even give to your wife. I'm sorry to say that, but that's kind of the best policy, right? And so, you know, besides me giving all this food and all this thing to them and money, she's bad-mouthing me to everybody here, saying I'm just such a bad neighbor. I don't play music loud. I don't have a lot of guests. I don't allow my wife's family to come here and act stupid. I have strict rules, and those rules were put in place to prevent from being bad neighbors, right? My rules are in place to prevent problems. And that just isn't my rules. These are basic rules, you know, no shouting. I get after my wife sometimes for that. You don't argue loud, you know. There's certain stuff you just don't. I don't do any of that. I don't drink. I don't cause problems to anybody. Matter of fact, I've given food to everybody during this apocalypse, during this lockdown. When they didn't have any, I was giving. So for them to talk bad about me, it's extremely stupid, okay? So I was curious about how to deal with bad neighbors in the Philippines, because there's some certain stigmas I'm going to talk about. There's some certain things. So this article is actually written by a Filipino. So it says, not everyone is lucky when it comes to having a good neighbor. A bad neighbor is defined as someone who is noisy, blows horn in the middle of the night, vandalizes, dumps dead leaves into your backyard, etc. There's given, you know, different examples from different variations, okay? Now, it says approach your neighbor. That's something I always do. I always come up to them and say, hey, you guys are, you don't have to stop your party. You're just being a little bit loud. Can you turn your karaoke down? I'm always very, very nice about it the first time. Usually I do video, because I've learned to video everything. That's the best thing you could do in life. Just bring a phone, have a security cam, video everything, because it just makes other people look stupid. So verbalize your concerns politely. Know the situation before, you know, deploring. So I always do that. It always backfires on me. Consider leaving a note. Don't do that in the Philippines. Don't do that. Don't do that in the Philippines. They should know better. Don't leave a note, okay? Consult your problem with the landlord. That's part of the problem I'm having now, is the landlord keeps renting to the worst scum on the earth, because when she advertises her apartment, she's advertising there's no rules here. One of the fastest going apartments in the Philippines is apartments that have security cams and security and rules. No loud music, because they'll evict you. Those are the hardest apartments to get, because those are the fastest ones going. And a lot of it's because of our landlady and her inability to perform simple tasks, right? Her inability to make sure there's rules, her inability to force the rules, and her inability to even check these apartments. So, I'll give you an example. She leaves these apartments open when people moves out. She doesn't even come by to check to see if they're clean, what kind of damage. She leaves them open because if somebody else wants the apartment, they come in and look. She doesn't want to be bothered with the keys. So I actually had a good neighbor. He never caused me a lot of problems. He lived with his sister upstairs, and just a couple other people. They worked at a factory together, right? For whatever reason, though, on his birthday, he thought it was a good idea to set up a bench and fans and food into one of those empties apartment, turn the water on and electric, and the landlady found out. So she evicted him, which is really rare. He got one warning and done, right? And I think a lot of it's because he was using electric and water wasn't his. Technically, that's thieving, okay? So finding a good landlord in the Philippines, it's very, very hard. But when you do find one, you find that those apartments, if they post them up, they're going to go the same day. And I know some Filipino women, they like to wait till 2 or 3 in the afternoon before they finally get around to doing anything. When you see those apartments post, you got to go 8, 9 in the morning. You got to get that wife up. You got to get her motivated. You got to tell her, hey, look, you can't take an hour to put your clothes on. You got to put that damn phone down. You got to stop Facebooking everybody. You got to stop doing videos. You got to stop texting. Get your act together. Stop doing all this crazy stuff. We got to get over to this apartment before somebody gets it. We cannot wait for 2 or 3. And she'll try to say, well, it's hot right now. Tell her, too bad. Put them damn clothes on. We got to go. And if she doesn't want to get ready, you leave her there. Find a new wife if you have to, because if she's going to be that lazy to find a good place to live, she doesn't deserve to be living with you. That's just the way I look at it. I'm very, very forward on that. So, consulting your landlord. If you're living in an apartment with loud music, address your concerns to your landlord, but sometimes it might be the landlord who's allowing that, right? But there are laws in the Philippines, so even though the landlord's allowing it, you don't have to take it, right? So, do your own thing. Don't just go to authorities without exerting personal efforts to migrate the bad situation. So they're trying to say is if you can live with it in a certain situation, if you can find a way to handle it, go ahead and do it. I don't have a problem with that per se. You shouldn't have to go out of your way to make somebody else's ignorant life better, right? Maybe that's the part of the problem. Now, talk to higher authorities. If your personal move don't work and your neighbor threatens you in any way, it's best to call the police. It won't do no good to threaten me, like I said. And I know maybe other foreigners might get threatened. There's some very small people, and other Filipinos might get threatened. That's the biggest thing that they worry about, is maybe getting stabbed in the back. Like I say to them, like I say to bad neighborhoods, if you're worried about being shot because you're talking to the police, if you're worried about being stabbed in the back, that's the time you have to speak up. Logic would dictate that's the neighbor that you need to get rid of. If you're so afraid of them that they're going to commit some kind of violent act against you, that's why you and everybody else needs to speak up, and that's when you have to go to the authorities, right? But the problem is that 5 goes into 6, form alliance with other affected neighbors. So say somebody's doing loud karaoke, somebody's making all kinds of noise, or like my neighbor, they're fist fighting all the time, and they're causing all kinds of drama, and they're talking bad about you. In the Philippines, you're not going to be able to form alliance with other neighbors. It's just not going to happen. It's more likely if you try talking to the other neighbors about the problem, the situation, even though they know they hear it, the neighbors will lie saying they never heard anything. It's more likely those neighbors will form an alliance with the bad guy. So don't expect any neighbor help in the Philippines, especially Manila. You're going to have to do everything on your own. You're going to have to do everything against the grain. Your neighbors will not help you in the Philippines for nothing. Don't expect it. Okay, now move out. This is not highly recommended advice, but other options of work. Unfortunately, that's what's going to have to happen, right? Like I said, when you're moving out and you're trying to find a place that has rules, no loud music, no fighting, they go quick. They probably go quick in America too, especially if you can afford a place that has security guards and everything else. So you got to move quick. But unfortunately, moving out doesn't stop them for being violent or bad neighbors. So yeah, the person who wrote this article, I know they were just trying to give good advice, but there's a couple of things on there that are very bad. Traditionally doesn't work too good. In some places, they'll have like HOA, the housing, right? So the housing guy wants you to go to him 3 or 4 times first before you go to the Baron guy, which I think the Baron guy is useless. The Baron guy is like a local city hall is the best way I could describe it. It's a civilian that's not trained to deal with anything, but gets paid to try to enforce rules. And sometimes you try to go straight to the police, but the police make you go to Baron guy first for situations. But the police are the ones that should be handling this. I think the Baron guy is one of the most useless jobs in the Philippines. It needs to go away. I think the police are capable of handling everything with good training. So basically, the situation in the Philippines is first, they want you to go to the landlord 3 or 4 times. They want you to go to the local head of housing. So you might live in a subdivision, right? And subdivision might be Kingsland. So Kingsland might have a guy that's appointed that's supposed to be the head of clean. They want you to go to him 3 or 4 times. After the landlord 3 or 4 times. They want you to go to the Baron guy 3 or 4 times. Then after the Baron guy don't do nothing, then you can go to police and file a report. So it takes like 9 to 12 times, and that could be a whole year long. And it's an extremely stupid situation. So what I recommend is you go to the landlord 1 time. If the landlord doesn't fix it, you try to go to the Baron guy and tell the Baron guy, look, I'm not going to tolerate this 3 or 4 times crap. That next time they do this, I'm going to have a lawyer file charges against them. That's the best thing you can do. Honestly, that's literally the best thing you can do. But anyway, thank you for watching this video. I hope that it helps in any kind of inclination. And you guys have a nice day. Try to take care of each other and learn to be good neighbors.